There was a lot of different dynamics in the just concluded elections. Number one, we had a sitting deputy president who was running like an opposition candidate, and an opposition candidate who was running like the establishment candidate.
What would you say is the future of most of these candidates? Let's say Martha Karua. What would you say is the future?
Martha Karua is still a very strong woman. She runs the Na Kenya party, as I said, but the sad thing is that she has no elective lead.
So, very strange situation. There are many candidates who campaigned very well during the election, and the last few weeks, some of them did not even campaign, and they didn't even have agents at the polling stations. So it's like a runner who runs, but when it comes to completing the race. Welcome to Real Life and Politics. I need to stress here that we are very unbiased, and if anyone sees any bias, you are free to comment in our comment section. Today we are honored to have Mr. Patrick Langat, who is the political editor at the Daily Nation. He had a good experience covering the just ended election. Mr. Langat, welcome.
Asante sana Bwana Henry, it's a pleasure being here.
As political editor of the nation, can you explain to us the dynamics of the recent election?
There was a lot of different dynamics in the just concluded elections. Number one, we had a sitting deputy president who was running like an opposition candidate, and an opposition candidate who was running like the establishment candidate. So Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga respectively ran very different elections from what they have done in the past. William Ruto had died in the wool establishment man who's risen from being an MP to being deputy president, and Raila Odinga, this hardcore political opposition supremo, becoming the establishment candidate by the support of the president and the establishment supporting his candidature. So it was, from the word go, the just concluded elections had very different dynamics, and we were bound to see many different things happening in that election. But there were also things that were smaller than just the candidature of these two big men. There was the postponement of the governor elections in Kakamega and Mombasa, two key bases of Raila Odinga, and which were being eyed by the deputy president. There was a case of the IBC doing something they had not done before, being very open and very efficient in loading the results form at the polling stations, which changed the dynamics of that elections, in the sense that every Kenyan could download the results from all the 46,000 polling stations, do their own tally, and be able to know who was winning and who was not. So it was an interesting election in all those aspects, I would say.
What would you say are the main lessons learned in this election by both sides?
One of the main lessons learned in these elections, I think, for the politicians, first of all, is that the game changer that was in having agents in every polling stations. If the idea by the IBC is that they would, the elections body, is that they would have all the results form in this particular form, public portal, as and when they are announced. That became a game changer, and I think for politicians going forward, the lessons would be either you invest in a really good tallying system that now helps you monitor your results, but number two, also compounded by the fact that you have agents in every polling stations that are able to report to you what were the results, what were announced, so that you have something to compare what is in the public portal and what is actually brought to you by your agents as a result of that election.
Now, we saw a very strange situation. There are many candidates who campaigned very well during the election, and the last few weeks, some of them did not even campaign, and they didn't even have agents at the polling stations. So it's like a runner who runs, but when it comes to completing the race, they don't complete it properly.
It's one of the things they would need to re-strategize going forward, because the election can be won or lost in the last hours or so. So that when the campaigns ended 48 hours to the election, that should have been the time to give it your best shot. Give your best speech, hire your best people to monitor your votes, make sure you have the best messaging to summarize what you've been saying during the campaigns. While it is understandable that it had been a very grueling campaign and politicians would be tired, really the idea that they should have given their best shot in the very last days to the campaigns cannot be overstated. And then the election doesn't end at you giving your best message on the last day. The elections end when you have received your results and you know they are your valid results, you have people monitoring them, and that is where having agents at the polling stations becomes very important, because those are your armies. Those are the people that will tell you, in polling station A you had this number of votes, and what the elections body is saying you had in that polling station either isn't right, or we refuse to sign it because of that. If a presidential candidate does not have such a system, it is very difficult for them to then audit the elections process for their own mathematics to know what their tally was. And then number two, it also becomes very difficult to know what you had or didn't if you didn't have people in the stations where the voting happens.
Now, you come from Rift Valley in Bomet.
Yes, I do. Yes, Bomet and Nakuru, I have.
Yeah. Please explain to us about Rift Valley politics. Does the election of William Ruto, who is now the president-elect, mean change the dynamics in the Rift Valley? There was this row between the Ruto and the Gideon.
And the son of the former president, yes.
Yes.
Obviously, when William Ruto ran for president, I think it was known that he was the Rift Valley Supremo. He was going to be the biggest political kingpin in that region. But the presence of the son of the former president and this chairman of Kenya's oldest party, KANU, brought these different dynamics and a way in which they wanted to challenge Deputy President's dominance in that political base. This election has shown that he is no doubt Deputy President is no doubt has firm control of the Rift Valley. All those political operatives that were aligned to the son of the former president, Gideon Moi, were either defeated, including himself. Gideon Moi lost in his bid for a third term in the Baringo Senate seat. All those that ran as independents after either being removed or refusing to join William Ruto's UDA party were defeated. The likes of Alfred Keter, the likes of Swarup Mishra, the likes of the Jubilee Deputy Secretary General Joshua Kutuin, the likes of Alex Solgos, the Elgeyo Marakwet governor, who was the most visible and the most senior Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition appointment in the Rift Valley. They all lost their seats. But I think they made a point. They made a point in the sense that even if William Ruto won in all those seats, they were able to get a few votes for the former Prime Minister. Getting about 200,000 or so from the Rift Valley is not a joke. The former Prime Minister won in Turkana, he won in Narok, he won in Kajiado, he won in Samburu. These pastoralist counties of the Rift Valley, which had been with him in 2017, but he was not able to penetrate as much these other Rift Valley counties. So while William Ruto consolidated his base in the Rift Valley in the last elections, Raila Odinga was still able to control the bases that were still loyal to him anyway, these pastoralist regions, still being able to get governors in those regions, a governor in Kajiado, getting an Azimio governor in Samburu, getting an Azimio governor in Turkana would still mean that he still has support, but it has really been cut down by the deputy president, who is now the president-elect.
Now, what do you think happened to Uhuru Kenyatta, President Uhuru Kenyatta, because there was this push by him to get votes for Raila, then there is the Is it the generation difference? The Kikuyu call it Itweku or Itweka, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And you find the people who are over 40 and above, about 40 years, they were all supporting Ruto. The youth did not play a very big role, that some of them voted. That's why we had a low voter turnout. So do you think Uhuru has a future in central Kenya politics?
I think his political future has been punctured, but you really can't write him off. He's a president, a two-term president. He's been a former opposition leader. He's the son of the former president. You can't write him off. But I think there is general agreement that these last elections punctured him quite a lot. He would be blamed, number one, for the fact that he had promised to go to campaign for the former prime minister in Mount Kenya. We never saw him go campaign, and so it is a question of what if he had gone. No one knows what the effect of him campaigning for Raila Odinga would have been in Mount Kenya, because
But
he
he
didn't
made
go.
some appearances.
He made some appearance, but not in political rallies, not with
right,
the
yes,
former prime minister. He would go to Western. He went to Western. He went to Nyanza, where any political observer would say he was not needed. Raila Odinga was okay with his bases in Nyanza and in Western. Where he needed support to get votes was President Uhuru Kenyatta's Mount Kenya region, which he didn't do. So there would be questions about what if he had gone, what if he had mobilized these people to vote for this preferred presidential candidate, what would have happened? And I think there is also an aspect of the president and the Azimio group underestimating what was William Ruto's penetration in the mountain. William Ruto had been campaigning and charming and doing all this political operation in Mount Kenya since 2017 or 2018, right after. So to assume that you would be able to turn back the gains he had made in just 4 or 3 months was, in my own estimation, an underestimation of what he had done. And then there is the aspect you have said about whether there was a generational gap between what the president and the Azimio team was selling and what William Ruto sold. Political observers have said that William Ruto went to the heart of Mount Kenya in the sense that he spoke to them through the churches, through all these political operations, through the border, and the things that actually matter to. He went to the ground and spoke to the people, while the Azimio team attempted this elevated kind of politics, where you talk to them either through radio, TV stations, or you make an appeal to them about ideas that William Ruto had already sold long before, and they seem to have bought it. Even then, it is important to say that Raila Odinga got votes he had never gotten in Mount Kenya.
It's true.
The former prime minister got 800,000 votes, which is about
In the central
20-something percent. Yeah. It is impressive that in the 2007, 2013, 2017, he never had any of those votes. In places like Kipia, he was almost closing in on Deputy President William Ruto. He had about 40% of the vote against William Ruto's about 60% or 58% or thereabout. So while he did not get out the vote that I think he had hoped to get in the mountain, he made inroads that he had never made before. And that's why I think the issue of what if the president had actually firmed up his support for him and campaigned with him in the mountain, whether things would have been different. It's something political scientists would be studying going forward.
Yes, I think you're right in the fact that the Azimio people did not take Ruto seriously. They thought it was a joke, and they didn't know how much he had penetrated Central Province. They thought it was one of those jokes, and that's why they were hit very hard. What do you think happened to Martha Karua?
Martha Karua's candidature as a running mate was interesting in many perspectives. She was a woman running mate candidate. the first of which was running in a ticket that actually had a shot. So there was a lot of excitement when she was named as a running mate, and I think people hoped that that would rally either the women vote or the Mount Kenya vote behind Raila Odinga. But what we've seen from the results of those elections is that not much came from it. And I think two reasons can be proposed to what that might have happened. Martha Karua runs Na Kenya party, which was not able to get any MP seat, any governor, any senator. It wasn't able to get any elective seat.
Or
anywhere else. It was not able to get any elective seat except, I think, a few MCA seats, which is unfortunate. Which is unfortunate in the sense that this was a party you were hoping to then become the third biggest party after ODM, Jubilee, and then the idea was that to have Na Kenya. So there was that aspect that she belonged to a party that apparently does not have the ground support that Martha Karua would have hoped to have. And then number two, I don't think there is any scientific basis to this, but it seems there is no proven women vote or women support
that she garnered for Raila.
And it doesn't seem to, that women vote doesn't seem to exist in the sense that there are female voters who would go and say, I am voting this ticket because there is a strong female candidate in it. It seems people vote on other different lines, either on party, either on their interests, either on ethnic purposes, and that the women vote doesn't seem to be as big enough. Even before the elections, the various opinion polls that were done showed that not even on that segment of women alone that were asked a very specific question, do you think you would align more with Raila Odinga because of the presence of Martha Karua as a running mate? And most of the people didn't move. There was not much movement from when she was named as a running mate on May 16th to the August 9th elections when we actually got the actual result. Martha Karua being a 4-term MP for Gishugu, she did 20 years consecutively in parliament. She ran for president in 2013. She was a minister of justice, about 40,000 votes. She was a minister of justice and constitutional affairs minister. So she's not someone you would wish away. She's a strong political operative. But I think there was just something about the ticket that didn't move the mountain as they had hoped it would.
Now, this generation change, I remember in 2017, there was this massive move to vote for Sonko in Nairobi by the same generation change. And then, of course, this time we have Sakaja. And then we also had the Waititu in Kiambu. Now, the funny thing is that Sonko could not last his term. Waititu could not last his term. Do you think this generation people, the generation change, do you think they may regret their move? Because now they have removed Uhuru Kenyatta from the main dance floor in Central Province. And they may regret do you think they'll regret their move?
I don't think they will. I don't think they will, in the sense that what happened with Mike Sonko, that populist campaign that he did in the city of Nairobi and won governor in 2017, later impeached over gross misconduct, and that very credible, very real threat that he posed in Mombasa, so that there are people that are saying, well, he put on the ballot, he might just have won the governorship in Mombasa. So that, for me, that populist drive that he took to Mombasa after being kicked out of the city, this close to being in the ballot, and the excitement that he was already creating, shows that there is not so much lessons that the youth take from their decisions, their election decisions, and what that means for the leadership that they would want. So that I imagine that they vote only based on what their interests are at that point. At that particular moment. So that I see the possibility that if Uhuru Kenyatta plans himself well and in 2027 fronts another candidate, does a better job at campaigning and appealing to these youth, they might actually follow what he says.
Yeah. How would you explain the low voter turnout in Central Province?
The low voter turnout was a countrywide problem. We had what, about 65, 66% voter turnout nationally, the lowest since we've had multi-party elections in 1992. The closest we ever got to that was in 2007, where we did about 60% or so. And during the 2007 elections, unlike now, after the 2013 elections, we didn't have the condition that the leading candidate has to get 50% plus one vote. And for both candidates, both leading candidates, William Ruto and Raila Odinga, voter turnout in Central and in Mount Kenya specifically meant quite a lot, because it means numbers. With the 10 Mount Kenya counties that are grouped together, controlling about 5 million votes, a voter turnout of 80% or as high as we did in 2013, 86%, would mean quite a number of votes. There have been those that have explained that the voter turnout was low in Mount Kenya specifically because they didn't have one of their own being a presidential candidate, one of their own having a real shot being a presidential candidate. But I think that is just the face of the problem. I think the problem cuts to the idea that either voters are getting to the phase where they are tired. They have been promised all these things, and now they are in a phase where you are the person you voted for in 2017 is asking you to vote for the person he was running against, and called all these names, running against a deputy that he had run with. So you have a population that is now forced to choose between the man they elected in 2017 and the man they went out in the morning to vote out. So that you have two very conflicting interests that are now being put to the voters'
And that caused
decision
confusion
table.
among the minds of some voters.
That's what I think happened. So that confusion, and I think a bit of frustration. You don't know what it is you are expected to then decide from these two choices you are given. And having about 35% of registered voters not coming out to vote is a serious dent on
7 million and something.
7 million and something people not coming out to vote is a serious dent on democracy. But I think there were signs that this voter turnout would be low, especially given the voter registration numbers just before the elections. We saw youth that were eligible to register as voters simply not coming out to register as one. They would have their national identity cards, which is the document you need to register as a voter, but they really just didn't care. So that going forward, there has to be a discussion over whether we are appealing to the youth correctly, whether politicians are appealing to the youth correctly, whether they are crafting their message correctly and it is resonating with the youth, and why, if those two things I've said are true, why is it that they are not able to mobilize these voters to then come out and vote on election day?
Which mistakes can you point out in the campaign videos? There's a failure to deploy agents, that you have mentioned. Failure to finish the campaign.
So that failure really to deploy agents has to be one of the most destructive things that any presidential campaign team would do, because it denies a presidential candidate the chance, as I said before, to audit the votes that are coming in from the electoral body and be able to follow the tallying process. So that in cases where we had various counties reporting issues about the elections technology kits failing to identify some voters, if presidential candidates didn't have agents in those polling stations, it is very difficult to then address that problem. Having agents would have allowed them the chance to raise that alarm long before it became that big of a problem. The second problem, I think, or failures that presidential campaigns would have to look at going forward is that generally there was lack of adequate ground mobilization, in the sense that we focused, these presidential candidates focused so much on the national campaign, and forgot to make actual groundwork and people to mobilize voters on the ground level. It should have been
At the local level.
at the local level. You should have a good presidential campaign should have organized itself either as on the county level or on a constituency level, where you task your candidates in these other elective seats to mobilize the votes for you, because it is how they mobilize that would determine whether or not people come out to vote for you, and whether or not you can gauge that kind of support. But if you have focus on these big rallies, on going to driving through shopping centers and selling your message, while it might be effective at that particular time, there is no personal touch that voters would want to have. And the only way to have that is to have all these ground mobilizations that now marshal all these numbers at the ground level, at the village level, at the county level. And the best people to do it is to take advantage of the other 5 elective seats to marshal the votes for these candidates.
Now, do you think the failure by Raila Odinga to attend the debates or the boycott, whatever, of the debate, do you think it affected his numbers?
It is difficult to quantify whether or not it affected it, but he most definitely lost a chance to explain himself better. And as we have said early on in this discussion, finishing strong is very important. The debate came a week or so to the elections. Voters wanted presidential candidates to use those 90 minutes to summarize what they have been telling them. What is your policy issue on health? Why should I care about your policy issue on manufacturing? And I think missing out on that debate was a great disservice to himself and to the voters that he would have turned to himself in those 90 minutes. There are those that have wished away the debates. They have said President Kenyatta failed to attend it in 2017, yet he still won. That might be a valid point. But the idea that you failed to explain to voters that would have voted for you if you had is what hurts Raila Odinga, in the sense that he didn't come, especially considering the fact that he had come in 2017 and debated himself for 90 minutes, explained his agenda, explained his idea of parallel tallying. And I think there were some people that were actually glued to their TVs, hoping that he would explain what he is doing differently now, why they should care for his candidature a 5th time, and why they should vote for him as their 5th president. So I think he lost quite a chance, and I think Ruto took a very big advantage of that and just explained himself, answered all those questions that voters and viewers would have wanted asked. And whether or not it made up the minds of a few undecided voters, as the opinion polls had shown, is something that I think is quite happy about, having gone to that debate.
Yeah, it's true. I think Raila Odinga failing to attend the debate was a disservice to his cause. He should have attended and explained his points. Like in the US, if you fail to attend the debate, it's a very serious thing.
It's a very serious thing. And I think going forward, maybe it will be a point in Kenya where you consider media houses or whatever other organizations that organize these debates should consider putting that in law, as in the US. So that
is it by law in the US?
Yeah, it
that
is.
You must attend.
You are required to explain to voters what you want to sell to your people, so that it is the same thing of saying you cannot say put it in law that presidential candidates should get equitable coverage, and then on one hand you are allowing them to boycott the debates. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense.
Now, fate conspires against someone. I think you had mentioned it earlier. The election day, of course, we didn't have election in Kakamega and Mombasa, and that really affected Raila Odinga because those were his main areas. Now, if these elections had been held, the Kakamega and the Mombasa governor votes, I think we would have seen a few hundreds of thousands more voters. So this was he was a bit unlucky that these things were not held.
It was the most unfortunate thing, and IBC, the elections body going forward, should be made to account for that. There should really there is really no reason for the electoral body to tell us a day to the elections that we were not able to get governor elections ballot papers to the right places. There is really no excuse for it. And I think going forward, the elections body should be made to account for it. They had a verification process. They went to where the ballot papers were being printed. They should have verified them before they were shipped to the country. But be that as it may, the postponement of elections of governor elections in Kakamega and Mombasa bases that their current governors are the deputy party leaders of ODM, which would tell you how important those two counties are to the ODM leader Raila Odinga, was really affected his voter numbers. In Mombasa had the lowest voter turnout in the country at about 49% because of that issue. Kakamega a little more, about 59%, but still very low considering the national average of about 65%. And those two counties are populated. Kakamega has about 800,000 votes, Mombasa about 400,000 votes. So that if those governor elections were held, which I think, given the opinion polls just before the elections, is the second most important seat that Kenyans consider to be the second most important seat after that of the president. There are some people that just opted not to come. A lot of people opted not to vote in Kakamega and in Mombasa because of that postponement of the governor elections. And considering that the difference between William Ruto and Raila Odinga was just about 200,000 votes, that William Ruto passed the 50% plus one mark by just 69,000 votes, then you would understand why Raila Odinga would be absolutely disappointed that the elections body postponed elections in those two counties specifically. There were other constituencies that whose elections were postponed, but those two really affected.
Rongai was
really Rongai. There was Pokot South, there is Kacheliba, and there is Kitui Rural. But that really didn't affect the presidential elections and the voter turnout. But those two, Kakamega and Mombasa counties, were really injurious to Raila Odinga's presidential vote.
Just to conclude, I think now, what would you say is the future of most of these candidates? Let's say Martha Karua, what would you say is the future?
Martha Karua is still a very strong woman. She runs the Kenya party, as I said, but the sad thing is that she has no elective leader. So she has no elected official in any of the 4 seats, MP, Senator, Governor, and Woman Rep. So that would injure her process to reinvent herself. Raila Odinga still has fire in him. There is obviously the case he's launching at the Supreme Court, so it's not over for him. They have said they have all the evidence they need to overturn that elections and take us to a rerun, so we wait. But at 77, whether or not he would have another go at it at 82 if the Supreme Court does not agree with his evidence, is something we would wait and see. He obviously still runs a very big party. ODM is not is what, about 17 years old now. It has about 90 single constituency member seats. It has about 15 governors, so it is still a very strong party. He would still run it, and he would still have a say in the Kenyan elections, obviously. And I think what happened to him between 2017 and 2022, where he moved from the opposition leader to the second most powerful man in the country, really shows you that Raila Odinga is not someone you can write off. You might see him as if he is down, and he just pulls something that would surprise everybody. Did you want me to address anybody else?
No, Martha Karua? Future of Martha Karua?
Martha Karua will be, I think her future is tied to what happens in this case at the Supreme Court, because having a party that has really no other elected leader, as I have said, would make it very difficult to still maintain the push that she had as Raila Odinga as a running mate. Kalonzo has reinvented himself. Kalonzo in these elections really reinvented himself. He won the 3 governor seats in Ukambani, which he didn't have any. I think he only had one in 2017 with Kivutha Kibwana, who then moved to his own party. Now he has 3. He has the governor of Makueni, Wavinya Ndeti, the governor of Kitui, Dr. Julius Malombe, the governor of Makueni, Mutula Kilonzo Jr. He has the 3 senators in those seats, in those counties of Ukambani, and he has about 23 or so single constituency members of parliament. So for Kalonzo Musyoka, this might just have been his best elections. He did very well, delivered about 800,000 or so votes to Raila Odinga, and established his dominance, I would say, as the Ukambani political kingpin. I don't think anybody can now question Kalonzo Musyoka's political dominance in Ukambani, having done so since 2007 when he ran that solo presidential campaign and got about 800,000 votes.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very good analysis from the political editor of the Daily Nation. We are also very thankful to NASCOS, the Nation Circle launch, and we hope we'll do this again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Asante sana.
Yes,
it's been a pleasure.